Hello. Hello, welcome. I'm Karen Kennedy, functional nutritionist and blood sugar hacker. On today's Metabolic Health Series interview, I am so excited to welcome Leah Pinelli, badass weight loss and lifestyle coach. And because Leah has a voice made for radio and has one of my favorite podcasts, I don't think I could do a better job of introducing her than she could herself.
Aww.
So it's hooked up to my earbuds.
Oh, you gotta pop
There
this
we
back
go.
in the case, right? I know.
Welcome to the life you simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave.
There it is.
Who doesn't want that? Hi, Leah.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I have loved your podcast, and having you on my calendar has given me the excuse I needed to just binge them over the last week. So on my walks have been it's all Leah all the time.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I'll tell you, the more I have your voice in my head from your podcast, the more I'm like, where was this voice when I was in my 20s, when I was a badass young woman?
Yes.
Rocking my life, my education, but not rocking my relationship with food, my body, and myself. Like those things that seem, especially for professional women who are really ambitious and rocking all the things, but then there's this missing part that we struggle with. And I see a lot of women that I work with who are incredibly successful, and there's this thing eating at them all the time.
All the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally.
So, I mean, I almost don't even know where to start talking with you, because I feel like I could have like 3 or 4 1-hour conversations with you. But I'd love to kind of start with your journey. I want to know, you talk about it every now and then, your own weight loss journey. Can you tell me how you got into this? Because you used to be a teacher. You're an educator.
Yeah. And so speaking of, you were saying like, where was this voice when I was in my 20s? That's exactly what I needed. So I actually was a teacher for 15 years. I worked in education, both as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a dean of discipline. I, kind of did it all within public education. And right after the birth of to be clear, the whole reason I went into education to begin with is because I just wanted access to teens, because I was a wild child of a teen, and I did not have any adults who could really understand where I was at, help me to make better life decisions. So long story short, I actually repeated all 4 years of high school in community college because I made so many fun but poor choices in high school. And and a part of me was like, after I did all 4 years again, and then did 2 more years of undergrad. So I was at community college for 6 years. And then I did eventually transfer to UC Berkeley. And then it was after I graduated from Berkeley, I'll never forget, I was talking with my then boyfriend, now husband. And I was like, that was why didn't anybody intervene on me? And here's the thing, my parents tried to intervene, but they didn't get where I was. And so nobody just intervened from this place of hey, let's just look at your choices and let's kind of play out where this choice might lead you and where that choice might lead you. And are you still good with the choices? You know what I mean? As opposed to you're making really dumb, poor choices, kid, and you need to cut it out. That doesn't work. We're teenagers. Newsflash. So anyway, I was like, I want to go back and be a high school teacher because I really want to help kids who, like me, weren't navigating their lives in really smart ways. But I also understood that I also didn't want to be an A student. I wanted to party and have fun, but I noticed that my friends had figured out how to party and have fun and still get their work done. And that was the part that was missing for me. So anyway, I became a high school teacher, got pregnant with my son when I was an assistant principal. And I just knew I don't want to go back into the classroom. I don't want to go back into administration with a brand new baby. So I went back to the classroom, but I was given this opportunity to create an elective. They were like, you can teach an elective if you want, whatever you want, create it yourself. I was like, oh my God, this is my dream assignment. I want to create anyone who identifies as female, it's a space for girls to come and we're going to talk about all the things that actually impact teenage girls that never gets discussed in a safe and structured environment. So I created this course where, yes, we did yoga and meditation, but our topics were about sex in the media and how the media influences our perception of ourselves. We talked about relationships. What are healthy relationships like for real? And how do I choose better? We talked about self-worth, self-love, body diversity, like all the things. It was the best class.
Wow.
Sex trafficking. Like we talked about immigration, because at the time that I was doing this, former President Trump was elected at that time. And I was doing this work in East San Jose in California, which is, predominantly Latino. So it was very much hit home. Anyway, long story shorter, that course I just loved that work, changed my life. But I also realized that I was creating this space, this container for girls. Mm-hmm. And what was coming up for them was so intense and big and important. But I realized I don't actually have the tools to help them. Like I was telling them all day long, like, girl, you need to dump his ass. Like that boy's a loser. Like I could tell them stuff like that, but I wasn't actually able to really help them make decisions to help them navigate their lives in the way that my original intent. So that's when I did some research. I was like, I think I need life coach training. That's what I want to do for these girls, is I want to help them. I want to coach them through their lives.
You saw that they had a need and you didn't know how to give them the tools to
1,000%. So I went into training, and in the training, I discovered that I loved life coaching, like more than teaching. I couldn't believe it, because I thought I was meant to be a teacher forever. And I really wanted to marry these two. And so I started coaching women on the side with a real kind of ambition to really coach moms, busy professional working moms, so that they could show up better for their kids. Because what I was seeing in my container with my girls was that so much of our behaviors and habits stem from the modeling that we get, not just from the media, but also from our female role models. Mm-hmm. And so I had kind of heard about weight loss coaching, and I had done every diet in the book. I was a huge proponent of body diversity, still am. And I was like, that sounds like a scam, because if that worked, I would have done it by now. So I ignored, I started coaching in 2016, but I didn't even really look at weight loss coaching until 2018. And then I stumbled upon it on accident. It was like a tool that was shared on a podcast. I tried it and I lost 7 pounds, and I didn't change anything about what I was eating. I just changed how I was thinking and then how I was showing up with food. And I was blown away. And I was like, this has never happened before. I want to know more. And so I started down that path. And now what happened, the result of that was, yes, I lost 30 pounds and I've kept it off for nearly 5 years. But that doesn't even matter, because the part that was the most transformative was I freed up so much mental real estate in my brain that I was able to start a business, leave my career and start my own business. I have more time with my kid than I've ever had, than I ever imagined being able to have. I have this sense of freedom now because I'm not spending all of this time counting calories and carbs and worrying and dreading and are my pants going to fit, and none of it. Like it's gone. And so when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can teach women to do the same, to free up this mental real estate, and yes, lose some weight if that's a goal. If I can do that, we women will have so much mental real estate that we will be able to dismantle the patriarchy in a matter of months. Like we will be able to take over the world because we will be free mentally, right? From this ball and chain. And so that's when I was just like, I got to do this. This is my calling. And so that is the work I do now. And it does tie back though to my girls, because I believe that we can change the trajectory for the next generation of girls. If we, as mothers and as role models, because I have a son, but still, like as an auntie, as a teacher, anyone, if we can free that up, the next generation of girls will have the tools they need to take over the world. That's the plan. Master plan.
And thank you. That is that is what we're here for. Well, where to go from that? So one thing that you are talking about there is you talk about body diversity and supporting that. And one thing that I get from you that I don't get in the weight loss world, which is the United States of America, but I mean, because we grow up in a diet culture. Yes. And I hear that in your podcast. If you live in the United States of America, especially if you're female or identify as female, but we're targeted by this weight loss culture, and it's really at odds with body diversity.
Yes.
But when I listen to you, I don't see those two things at odds with each other at all. I hear things from you like being in alignment with yourself.
Yeah.
And figuring out what you want.
Yeah.
And less about there's weight loss as part of it for sure. But more of it is figuring out what you want and being in alignment with what you want.
Yes.
So how did you personally come to that place where you felt like you were in alignment with your values and coaching weight loss?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you're asking me this question. People don't usually ask this question. And I have spent so much time thinking about this because it was in conflict. This idea of, so here I was teaching self-love, body diversity, and the media and how it impacts, this psychology of girls. And yet I felt like an imposter because I was secretly struggling. Now, to be totally transparent, even though, yes, I weighed up over 180 pounds at that time, I did believe that I was still attractive. I was still beautiful. I had a good sense of self-confidence and self-esteem, but I did not feel at home in this large body, large for me. And by the way, large is relative, right? I'm not saying large compared to a supermodel. I don't care about a supermodel. I was talking about me, right? This was a larger body than I was used to. Even though I had always struggled with weight, up and down, up and down, up and down. When we really know ourselves, there is a body kind of size and weight that feels like home. And what I mean by that is it feels in alignment and it feels good. I don't have to struggle and deprive and white knuckle my way to keeping this size body. That's not alignment. That's the opposite. But I also am not doing things, and this is what I was doing back then, is I was engaging in behaviors that were out of alignment. So for example, I had a totally voracious appetite and I could eat constantly and I could eat as much as my 6'7" husband. And I'm like, ex-hockey goalie, like something's wrong here and not really feel that stuffed. And I felt like I only had there was two kind of modes. It was either starving or stuffed. So I was always uncomfortable because starving is uncomfortable and stuffed is uncomfortable. So there was this sense of I'm not doing this right. I'm not able to, and I would eat healthy foods, but I was overeating them. And so there was this it was like I was engaging in these behaviors that were really self-destructive, but I couldn't figure out why I was doing it or how to stop. The weight of my body was a result of those behaviors. And so it wasn't so much to say I wanted to lose weight because I wanted to be more attractive. I did feel attractive. It was the behaviors that were bothering me. And so when I was preaching self-love to my girls, I did feel that self-love, except I was but I feel like there's something wrong. There's something missing,
Right.
So then when I lost the weight I don't want to say without trying, I was definitely putting in effort, but the effort was not toward weight loss. The effort was toward behavioral change. So what I learned was, and this is where you and I overlap so much, Karen, which is what I love about following you in your work, is when I really learned how highly processed foods, even though I was a healthy eater, I was still eating a lot of processed foods. Highly processed foods were impacting my insulin levels, or it's impacting my blood glucose levels. When I understood that, which was making me hungrier and increasing my cravings. And so no wonder every night when I'm washing the dishes and I can't get through the dishes without eating at least 10 dark chocolate covered peanut butter cups, can't get through it. It all made sense how it all worked. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understand how to break the cycle. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with me. This is biochemistry. This is my body responding.
There's nothing wrong with you. This is what your body reacts to food.
So then when I figured out that balance, when I was so when I eat this is what happens. And I don't mean weight, I mean in terms of my cravings and my hunger, right? When I eat a big bowl of pasta, which I'm Italian American, I grew up eating this way. When I eat a big bowl of pasta, I don't really feel satisfied. So I keep eating. And I keep eating what my mom has given me, which is pasta. She put veggies on the table too, but it wasn't working. My body needed more protein and my body needed more fat. Right. And so it was when I figured that out, I was oh my gosh. And when I figured out that I don't have to count anything, there's no macro counting, there's no carb counting, and there's definitely no calorie counting.
There's a lot of freedom there. Wow.
So much freedom. So much freedom.
Well, here, I want to back up because so you were just talking about that, and what was I going? It made me think. First of all, I want to back up because you have a hunger scale that you work with, and you put like this. You lead with the hunger scale.
Yes.
And well, first of all, tell people a little bit about this hunger scale, because it seems too good to be true, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because you talked about you would overeat and you were eating too much, and it wasn't about the food, it was about what was going on. So tell me about the hunger scale.
So the hunger scale was the first tool that I learned that I had just referenced earlier on that podcast that I was listening to, where I lost 7 pounds without trying, just by implementing this one tool called the hunger scale, which I teach for free, and you can get at my website, leahpinelli.com. And I'll make sure Karen has the link. I think you already do, actually. But the hunger scale is basically this concept that we have, this crazy concept that we have natural hunger and natural satiety signals in our bodies it's called leptin and ghrelin, and they are designed to tell you, hey, you're hungry right now, you should go eat something, and hey, you've had enough, you're satisfied. Those hormones can get totally out of whack thanks to diet culture and highly processed foods, because we as women have been told for forever that you cannot trust, do not get hungry, don't allow yourself to get hungry, because oh my gosh, if you get hungry, you're going to go wild, you're going to eat the whole fridge, you're going to binge, you're going to do all the things. So make sure you always have a little snack in your bag and eat before you're hungry. And so here we are, we don't let our bodies get hungry, so we don't know when we're hungry. And I have so many clients come to me and say, Leah, I'm so embarrassed, I don't actually know when I'm hungry. I'm like, don't be embarrassed. I didn't either. Because we don't let ourselves get hungry, because we don't trust ourselves to feel hunger and then to nourish ourselves properly. So the hunger scale really works to teach you how to let yourself get just a little bit hungry, and then how to nourish yourself to just the point of that first whisper of satisfaction. So it's like allowing yourself to get that first whisper of hunger, and it's real hunger. And this is what I teach in the training. It's under 17 minutes long, if you can learn it quickly. But how to tell, am I actually physically hungry, or is this mental hunger, emotional hunger, habit hunger? That's another big one. Oh, it's 12 o'clock, time to eat. And we're not checking in with our bodies. Wait, do I even want to eat? Am I hungry? Do I need food right now? So when you learn to eat only when you're hungry, and then to stop eating at that first whisper of satiety, but with the promise that you will eat again as soon as you're physically hungry again, what ends up happening is two things. One, and this is the best part, you actually recalibrate those hunger signals. They start kicking in again, because they're like, oh, she's actually paying attention to us. We actually can go ahead and show up in her world. But the second thing is this, and this happens to everyone that I coach, is they're like, I am shocked at how often I eat when I'm not actually hungry, and how I'm not actually hungry all that often, right? So that's the first step. That's really the first step, is first just recalibrating your hunger signals, and your satiety signals. But then the second step from there is that still wasn't enough for me, because I still found that I could constantly be eating. And as you teach, Karen, if you're constantly eating, it means that your blood glucose levels and your insulin levels are constantly elevated, and we don't want that. So then it really became a matter of, what are the foods that actually create satisfaction when I eat them? And I teach these, I have these, what I call the 4 criteria for how to figure out what to eat. And the first one is that you have to enjoy thinking about eating it. So if you're like, oh, for lunch today, I'm planning to have I always use this example, I'm planning to have a salad with no dressing. I'm like, like, that sounds horrible. I'm not eating that. I'm not having a salad with no dressing, right? Or a steamed chicken breast. Like, no, thank you. Not for me. Maybe somebody else, not for me. So that would not meet the first criteria. The second criteria is that you have to actually enjoy eating it while you're eating it. And it's so funny how many foods I found that I was like eggs. I've always loved eggs. I really do still like eggs. It's just that I realized that a lot of times I would scarf them because I was kind of grossed out. And I realized, I'm like, you don't like eggs as much as you thought. Like, I do. I like them in a frittata, but I don't like them in certain way, so really noticing, do I enjoy this? The third criteria is, do I feel good physically and mentally after I've eaten it? So for me, ice cream meets those first two. I love thinking about ice cream. I love eating ice cream. I feel like absolute, I don't know if I can cuss on here. I feel horrible after I've eaten ice cream because it doesn't agree with me digestively. And so that doesn't meet that third criteria. And then the last one is, and this is for people, if weight loss is a goal for you, does what you're eating allow your one unique body to drop weight? And that's going to be different for everyone. I have clients who eat peanut butter every single day. And I have one client who eats peanut butter every day and she's lost 74 pounds. I have other clients who they look at peanut butter and for whatever reason, their weight won't move. So, it's very personal. It's a matter of figuring it out for yourself.
So I'm really hungry now listening to you talk about food.
Ice cream, peanut butter.
I want to remember to think about all these follow-up questions I want to ask. The first comment I have is when you're telling me this pillar about you have to want to eat it when you think about it. What that reminds me of, that actually ties into health because, the way we get our digestion going is our mind. We think about food. We want it. We're like, oh, I'm going to have this and I'm getting it ready. I'm sitting down. We lost Leah. She'll be back on. And as soon as we think about food and start wanting food, then our digestive juices actually start flowing. We get hungry, our stomach acid is produced, and that helps us to digest our food. Leah, where did you go? I think here she comes. There you are.
What happened? Hold on, I gotta switch my camera real quick. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna just have to switch my camera over here.
That's okay. Let me see you.
You can hear me?
I hear you and I see you perfectly.
Okay, different angle.
There you go. No, what I was saying is that, when you do that, that actually turns on and your salivary glands kick in, your stomach acid starts getting produced, you produce enzymes, your motility increases because your brain is what turns on your digestion. It shifts you into eating mode.
Yes.
So if you don't want to eat, you're not going to digest it very well. And there goes your health.
Yes, totally. And that's where I found too, to your point is like the velocity with which I would eat when I wasn't really enjoying it because I would just kind of want to get it over with. Right. And so that eating too quickly is also going to impact your digestive health. Right. Like if I'm just inhaling, raw salad.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Here's the question I have for you, because this is what came up for me. And I'm way better. Especially my 20, 30-year-old self would have been like, how can I trust myself? Like if I'm only going to eat when I'm hungry, I haven't been able to trust my body up till then. I can't trust its cues. My body has led me astray and betrayed me so many times.
Yeah.
This would freak me out.
Yeah, totally.
Do you get that a lot?
So that's interesting. You're the first person who's actually said it like that, but I do think that is exactly what people struggle with. And what's interesting is that I usually like to emphasize that. So I had a client just eat using the hunger scale, and she lost 20 pounds just doing that. And I lost 7. So what I have found is that usually people need to move into actually then starting to look at what they're eating, because what you'll find is, for example, if I'm eating only when I'm hungry and stopping when I'm not, I still might be eating foods that are causing me to be hungrier more often. And I might also have trouble. Like I remember explaining to my sister once, who never struggled with the same things that I struggle with, which just goes to show you that you can be born to the same parents and raised in the same household and still have different, kind of issues in this way. But I remember explaining to her once, I was like, I feel like the difference between hungry and full for me is like an entire or just satisfied, that moment of like first whisper of satisfaction to having overeaten. I remember telling him, like, I feel like it's an entire burrito. Like I could eat a whole burrito in there and still not really feel, until I feel stuffed. I couldn't feel the satisfaction. Right. And so that was though, because of what I was eating. So there's, it's multifaceted when it really comes to healing your relationship with food, but also healing your relationship with yourself, because I couldn't trust myself to really stop eating when I wasn't really hungry if I was eating certain foods that I understand now were biochemically encouraging me to continue eating them.
Right.
So when we're talking about, eating, I love Funyuns or I love ballpark nachos, with like the
yes, I do.
Love that stuff, right? I can eat that stuff for hours without my satiety, without leptin kicking
That's
in.
what they're designed to. They're designed to
Exactly.
be eaten for hours. That's
So what happens is, and by the way, I
scientists.
still enjoy those foods. Like I still enjoy those foods. It's not to say that these foods are bad, but I had to learn what are the foods that I actually, that don't allow my natural, signals to kick on. And then those are the foods that I'm not going to be enjoying every day because I don't want to feel that. It's not because I'm afraid of weight gain. It's because I don't want to feel like I am compelled to continue eating something that I really would love to stop eating.
Right.
And
that's such a
20 and 30-year-olds about like trusting your body. That's actually an entire component of my program. We have an entire it's a major pillar is really learning to trust yourself. And it's a process. And the way we learn to trust ourselves is usually by betraying ourselves over and over and over until we get sick of it. And then we're like, you know what? I've had enough. Elizabeth Gilbert has this beautiful quote about something about how the most beautiful transformations that she's ever seen in her life came from people really not being able to tolerate their own bullshit anymore. And it's the same idea.
That's it. It's everyone's rock bottom.
Yeah.
You have to live. So it's interesting you talk about that you eat foods that make you want to eat more. I've been following Richard Johnson's work, and he's the guy who wrote Nature Wants Us to Be Fat.
Yes.
Uric acid stuff. And what he writes about is that certain foods, eating a certain way, when our blood sugar goes up, or when we eat a lot of fructose or refined sugar, it triggers foraging behavior. But they call it a survival switch. It switches you into insulin resistance. It makes your body think starvation is coming.
Yes.
We must conserve our energy, i.e., instead of using it for all the things we need to do, we're going to store this because famine or war or whatever's coming in. So, and one of the behaviors that triggers is foraging behavior. They've studied it in other animals besides 23-year-old women. We people without refrigerators to go, I just
right.
That's what we call foraging behavior, and that it's a biological survival mechanism. There's nothing wrong with us. This is how we survive.
Yes, absolutely. And this is where, I also think, a lot of my clients are angry with their bodies. They're angry that their bodies aren't doing what they want their bodies to do. And they feel betrayed by their bodies because they're like, I've done all these diets, I've restricted all these calories, and still my body won't cooperate, right? And they do recognize there's a lot of self-sabotage, but a lot of times there is just a lot of anger with their bodies. And for me, I'm like, thank God I have a body that wants to be fat. Thank God I have a body that wants to keep me alive, know? And so, but it's like, but I also know that I have a prefrontal cortex, and that I know that I don't need to store all of this extra fuel on my body. I do want to store some, but I don't need to store, an extra 30 pounds or whatever.
Right.
Because I have a refrigerator and I have a store and I'm
a supermarket. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I have a question. So Sharon is asking, can I show this? Oh, I can. Look at that.
Oh.
How do you manage this with the intermittent fasting trend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the way that I work with clients is there's no one way. I mean, this is why when you look at, for example, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the author's name of the Blue Zones, Dan, I can't remember, but he wrote the Blue Zone. Yeah. He did the study of the Blue Zones that basically follows, he did all of this research around the places in the world where they have the highest concentration in terms of numbers of people who have lived the longest, longevity wise, but also with optimal health. And there are these 7 zones throughout the world that he calls blue zones, where, there are clusters, these communities of people who live a very long time and they live very, very well in terms of their health. And in all of these places, there are some crossovers. Like a lot of people, they all eat, plant-based, meaning there's a lot of vegetables, not purely plant-based, but tons of veggies. A lot of people have their own gardens. They all have a way of downshifting every day, meaning to release stress and things like that, blah, blah, blah. There's these 9 things that they all have in common. But what they don't have in common is they're not all eating the same foods. So for example, one of the blue zones is actually in California, and it is a Seventh-day Adventist community. I think it's in Long Beach. And Seventh-day Adventists eat very little because their bodies are their temples in terms of their relationship to God. And they eat very little fat. They eat almost all vegetables. They're vegetarian, and the protein is actually quite low. To me, this does not sound like the way that I want to eat, but it works for them. And they have optimal health. They exercise a ton and they live into their 80s, 90s, and 100s with like perfect health. Then you go over to Sardinia, which is a little island off of Italy. And in Sardinia, they are eating bread and they're eating goat cheese, like good chunks of goat cheese every day. And they are drinking wine every single day. It is a part of their downshift. So my point is that there's no one way for anyone. That, we have, native communities, First Nation communities in places like Alaska that are eating huge amounts of fat. And right. And so the point is that like, there's no one way. And so for me and my clients, there is not one way. We don't all eat the same way, but we do all follow some of the same we use a science-based platform. So we are not eating highly processed foods on a daily basis, things like that, right? But there's nothing that we say we can't. I love the freedom too, Melissa. There's nothing that we say, I can't have that. Like there's none of that, right? Like I said, I still enjoy ice cream and I still enjoy fettuccine Alfredo. I still enjoy it. So to get to the question of intermittent fasting is a tool that works for a lot of people. But when I say works, I'm not actually talking about weight loss. It does work for weight loss for a lot of people. That is true. But intermittent fasting is a tool that people will use to actually optimize their energy levels and feel better. So I do have clients, if they are interested in intermittent fasting, and if they want to experiment with it, it is a part of my program. It's optional, but it's one more tool that they may or may not choose to use, right. But they only use it if they actually enjoy it. So joy and pleasure is a absolute non-negotiable in my world. I always tell my clients, we aren't going to do anything that you're not willing to do for the rest of your life because you're not going to sustain it. You're going to gain your weight back. So what's the point? So with intermittent fasting, which I actually do practice intermittent fasting because I feel better when I'm not actually hungry in the morning. Oh my God, newsflash. Like, gotta eat your breakfast, right? I don't eat breakfast. I haven't eaten breakfast for years because I'm not hungry. And I find that I feel better if I wait and wait till I'm actually hungry. And then I eat in the afternoon for lunch. And that works for me. I'm not as tired. I have better digestion. And I'm not feeling kind of weighed down because I ate breakfast when I wasn't really hungry. But again, I have lots of clients who don't do that. So it's just a matter of figuring out what works for you. And that's where the freedom lies.
Sorry, I'm busy blocking some awful commenter.
Out of here.
I mean, so I'm here because that's, when I hear like intuitive eating or, just watching those things, I think that's exactly what I think to back up to what you were saying before. If you're eating the kinds of foods that, really cause you to eat more. So it sounds like you're toggling back and forth between listening to yourself, figuring out what you want, asking yourself why, like you talk about being curious.
Yes.
But also you're pairing that with knowledge, like you're pairing that with knowledge about food, knowledge about your biochemistry and how you're interacting. So it's the knowledge and insight together.
Exactly. I love that you say toggling because that really is what it is. Like a lot of it is really practical. It's like, yeah, intermittent fasting works. So how does it work for you? Does it work for you? And then if it does, great, let's use it. But you have to love it. It has to feel good. If it doesn't feel good, we're not doing that. Right. Yeah. And then the other piece of it is that, what do you want? And you brought up intuitive eating. And here's where I was never successful with intuitive eating not teaching it. I've never taught it, but as a person who has tried it and it didn't work for me, it was exactly because intuitive eating misses the actual, the biochemical response that we have to food. It misses that. So for me, I could intuitively eat ballpark nachos and I will not stop eating them for hours. And because I don't feel satisfied. And I do know that, I know I have friends who are intuitive eating coaches. And so I do have respect for it. But again, if it works for you, fantastic. It didn't work for me and I don't teach it.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I can intuitive eat because I know I have the information to know what helps.
You had both.
Do that.
And that's what I felt like was missing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we have Megan has a question. She wants to know how you approach working with clients that have anger towards their body due to painful symptoms while eating certain foods. So a lot of, do you get that?
Full symptoms, eating certain foods. Megan, I don't know if you can give me an example. I'm wondering if you mean like, for example, I don't digest cauliflower very well. Is that what you mean by like painful symptoms, like having digestive issues and feeling like your body should be able to process those foods?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm wondering while she comes back with that. I'm interested because we all have clients who have food sensitivities.
Yes.
Or I have clients with they just can't digest their food very well. Every time they eat, they get a stomach ache and they get nausea.
Yes.
So let's see if she comes back to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So on the one hand, there is physical pain, and I actually use mindset tools to actually really start to explore our thinking. Yes, like bloating, diarrhea. Oh, when trying to eat healthy foods. Absolutely. So Megan, one thing that I do with my clients is we definitely go through a process to really figure out what foods cause the gas, bloating, and diarrhea and what foods don't. And really then try to build what I call it a protocol with my clients, which is basically it's a way of eating that's personalized to you, that you create with me, but it's personalized to you and it works for you. It has to work for you. And I call it a protocol because it's kind of what you eat on a regular basis. So for example, every day I have some kind of salad. I usually have a big bowl of fruit with either yogurt or cottage cheese at some point. And then I have, whatever we're having, fish or whatever with dinner and veggies and, whatever it is. Like there's kind of the same rotation, but it might not always be fish. Sometimes it might be chicken. And right. So there's kind of like the same kind of groups that I pull from every day, which simplifies it for me. And I enjoy all of it. So we would find that same kind of like process and rotation for you that works for you. But we might find through that process that you're like, oh, every time I eat X. So I noticed, for example, and actually and when I was in Karen's program, I actually switched this myself. Every day I would start my day with a big salad for lunch. But I think that because of it's so much raw roughage, it was hard for me to digest. And I would get really sleepy after lunch. And even though I was eating the right things, it wasn't carb heavy, as they say. I would get really sleepy after lunch. And sometimes I would get diarrhea. And then I finally figured out that I can totally eat salad because I love salad, but I'm going to have it with dinner. And that way, and I figured this out through Karen's program for myself, experimenting with myself. And so now actually the first thing that I eat every day usually is either something cooked like an omelet with veggies and eggs, which is easier for my body to digest, and or like a bowl of berries with cottage cheese or yogurt. And that's working so much better for me. I don't have that 3 p.m. slump anymore. So what we do, Megan, to answer your question is we really do investigate what are the foods that are causing it and what are the foods that don't cause it, and how can I build a protocol using foods that make me feel good? Because feeling good, like I said, is a non-negotiable. In terms of the anger, though, that you have toward your body, like a lot of that is coming from shoulds. I should be able to eat that. And I have clients who feel that way, whether it comes from eating healthy foods and your body not being agreeable. Also with eating, I should be able to have, sugar and not gain weight, right? Like everybody else has sugar. This is normal. Why can't I have it? And then feeling anger towards your body that your body is betraying. And what I say is honestly, there's a lot of mindset work that usually needs to be kind of undone in there, because that anger is often coming from this place of deep frustration and hurt and sadness, but also just this idea that I should be able to, right? It really comes from this idea that like, I have this idea about how things should be and they're not that way. And so I'm angry about it. And an example that I'll just use briefly is my dad, he developed a severe allergy to sesame seeds. And my dad is a very optimistic guy, to be fair, but he developed a severe allergy to sesame seeds when he was like in his 50s, which meant that, and they live in San Francisco. So like Asian food, Chinese food, Korean food, it's huge in San Francisco. And he could no longer eat in any Asian restaurants because he would like go into anaphylactic shock. And, but instead of like, people would be like, oh my gosh, you must be so bummed, that you can't eat that anymore. And he's like, oh my God, I'm just so relieved that I know, and I don't want it anymore because I don't want that to happen to me. And so his perspective was like, no, it's fine. my mom will like, cook at home, but the point is that, his perspective could have been, I should be able to eat those foods. And I'm angry that I can't go to dim sum anymore. But instead he was like, oh no, I'm so grateful that I know what it is so that doesn't happen to me.
Right.
So a lot of times it's a mindset shift.
It's a mindset shift. And that also, when people are having trouble eating healthy foods like that, often there is a functional gut disorder, some dysbiosis, some SIBO, and that can be a pivot out to address those.
Yes. And I do refer out regularly. In fact, I've referred clients to Karen, specifically to really figure that out. If it is something that's like, wait a minute, this is quite limiting in terms of what you're able to eat. Like we definitely need to talk to an expert in that arena.
So something in there you were talking about is, and I want to come back, I was listening to one of your podcasts, you were talking about the thing you should never say.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know. Is that it? I don't know.
Yeah, totally. So, for example, I'll say to a client, I have one client, I adore her, and and she'll be like, yeah, well, and I went to the birthday party and I didn't eat any of the cake, but then I came home and I ate my kid's entire box of fruit snacks, and I'm like, okay, why did you eat the fruit snacks? She's like, I don't know, Leah, I don't know. And I'm like, no, you can't say I don't know. Because the minute that we say, I don't know, we have completely stopped the investigation. It's over. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I don't know implies that there's like a lack of information and a void in our head that we can't do anything about because we don't have the answer. But the thing is it's not true. We always know, but we have to take the time to get quiet enough with ourselves to really go inwards and answer the question. So I always respond with, well, if you did know, what would you know? She hates it when I do that. Right? But if you did know, what would you know? Because the thing is we all know. And sometimes the answer might just be, honestly, because I had an urge. Like I was at the party, the cupcake was there, and I just had an urge to eat 3 of them. I just had an urge. I don't know. Like there might not be some big, huge, I was feeling stressed or sad or depressed. A lot of times when we think about emotional eating, we imagine this like sad girl in the middle of her kitchen floor at 2 a.m. eating directly out of the gallon of ice cream and like crying. That's not what emotional, I mean, it can look like that, but that's not usually typically what it looks like. It actually usually looks like I had a really long day. I'm really stressed out and I'm going to pour a huge glass of wine and I'm going to pull out a wheel of cheese. This is what it looked like for me, at least, and crackers. And I'm just going to eat until I feel numb. And that's often what it ends up looking like. And so that, when you say then, well, I don't know why I did that, then you stop the investigation. But when you say, well, why did I do that? It's like, well, I was stressed and I was looking to food to comfort me. And then when you figure that out, then you can ask the question, well, did it work? And the answer is always no. Hi, Amy. Oh, hi, Amy. I haven't seen Amy in so long. The question is, did it work? And the answer is always no. The wine and the cheese and the crackers and the peanut butter chocolate, it didn't actually solve my stress. Right. And that's what I was trying to do. It didn't actually soothe me because now I have a crap ton of mind drama about having overeaten, So it really becomes this, if that's not going to work, then what will work? So that's
so you're getting curious. Getting curious.
Absolutely.
I liked the phrase I always like is turning bad days into good data.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that. Absolutely.
So Leah took my hack your blood sugar using a continuous glucose monitor class. And you're talking about how you were having these salads at lunch and they were making you sleepy.
Yep.
And then instead of going, I don't know, I was making me sleepy, you kind of did some investigation and you sounds like you did some trial and error.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of curiosity because that is, I mean, we all have bad days. We all do things that are like, whoa, that I feel like crap now.
Yes.
I wonder why, so that you can repeat the good days and maybe not repeat the bad days as often.
Yes. And that is how you figure it out, right? That is exactly like, let's have less of those. And I actually just saw, I have she's my former personal trainer, and she just did a reel or a post about how, if you suffer from feeling sleepy after lunch, it's because you're eating a lunch that's too carb heavy and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, that's actually not true. And I know that that's not true because of your program, because what she explained was how your blood sugar is likely dropping because you had this carby lunch and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, having done your program and watching my blood sugar, I knew my blood sugar wasn't actually dropping after eating a salad. That was not happening. So then I asked you about it and you were like, it's probably like, you're like, tell me about your digestion. And I was like, oh girl, I can tell you how much time you got. But the point was that what I learned was that it wasn't really about my blood sugar. I didn't need to worry about that because I was eating things that weren't going to actually cause spikes and drops because my blood sugar was so boring the entire program. It like kind of stayed in the same range. But my digestion was, I was like, okay, so now the next thing. I'm not just gonna be like, well, I don't know. I wore the CGM and I wore the, you know, the glucose monitor and my blood sugar is not dropping. So I don't know why I get sleepy after lunch. I guess I'll just be done. No, I was like, oh, it's digestion. And so therefore, what if I eat something that's really easy to digest, which for me, cottage cheese and berries seems to work. And then all of a sudden I wasn't tired after lunch anymore.
Tired after lunch.
Yeah. But it took,
I mean, that's why I like the CGM because there's so many things that could like, there's usually when we advise people of the things that it's usually this in most people most of the time. So I'm going to put that out there.
Yes.
But it's kind of a lazy way of practicing for me. It's just like, hey, just stick this on and we'll see what happens.
It's so fun. It's so fascinating. I know when I did your program, I did it with 2 of my clients and we were just having so fun being like, oh, okay, tonight I'm going to have sushi. I'll let you guys know what happens on my monitor. You know, like we were so excited because sushi tends to spike. And, oh my gosh, it was so fun. It was just.
So what surprises did you have? What were some of the surprises? I remember you had chips and salsa surprise.
Yeah. So everybody was talking about how chips and salsa like would really spike theirs. And so I tried it. I was like, let me do the chips and salsa. And it didn't do anything. Here was my biggest surprise.
I'm so jealous.
What I learned, you had said, you were like, you just might not be very reactive. It's interesting because I do feel like I'm sensitive. So for example, if I have even like something like I had this black chai tea, it's just a tea bag, not like a, not with added sugar or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I did notice for a while, this is years ago, I was drinking it in the mornings. I had switched to that in the mornings. And I noticed that my stomach would really start growling at like 9:30, where it typically didn't growl before. I was never hungry at that time. I thought, what is going on? And then I looked at the ingredients in the black chai tea bag and saw that there's stevia leaf in it. Uh-huh. And so I figured out, I was like, it must be the stevia that's kind of, increase, I don't know, blood glucose. I don't know. I didn't try it when I was in your program, but so I thought that I was actually quite sensitive to insulin spikes, but doing the CGM, wearing the CGM, I noticed that my blood glucose really stays pretty constant throughout the day. I don't have big spikes, but that's because of how I eat. I mean, I've been eating in a particular way for quite some time, which is designed to not spike my insulin. Right. But what I would say was the most fascinating, I tell everybody about this, was that the thing that gave me the biggest spike was not the huge piece of chocolate cake that I had on my son's birthday. And it was not chips and salsa. That didn't do anything, but it was a Vietnamese fresh roll, a spring roll. And that was fascinating to me because I was like, wait, what? Because we think of Vietnamese spring rolls. I mean, they're full of like lettuce and carrots and mint and basil. Like they're these big salads that are wrapped in rice paper, right? With some shrimp in there. And oh my God, so good. It's my favorite food, by the way. And that gave me the biggest spike. And then later I had the chocolate cake. On the same day I had the chocolate cake, and the chocolate cake just did like a little blip. But that spring roll, really spiked it up. And I asked you about it, and we figured that it's probably the carb content of the rice paper, but it's all tapioca. What is it? Tapioca starch or tapioca powder, whatever it is, flour. But man, that was a real eye opener to me, that the things that you might think aren't always the things that it actually is. And then also it was so helpful because had I seen that my personal trainer, my physical trainer's post before about getting sleepy after lunch, I would have been like, oh, maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe she's right. And maybe, am I eating too many carbs at lunch, even though I'm just having salad? I would have kind of spun around about it. But instead I was like, nope, I've looked under the hood. I loved when you said that. Like, it's just looking under the hood. I'm like, nope, I've looked under the hood and I know that my blood glucose is not dipping after lunch. So it's got to be something else. And then it got me closer to what the answer actually was, right? Which was this huge raw veggie bowl that my body was having trouble digesting. So I wanted to take a nap in order to do it.
This seems like the perfect, like my program is all information. It's like all look under the hood. And then you've just inserted this into your, really comprehensive mindset program. And it's just
together. Really it does go together. And I'll also say, by the way, that one of my clients who did the program with me, I referred her to your program first because she has diabetes, runs in her family. And she's worked with me for years, and I think she's lost 25 pounds working with me. I could be wrong about that, but at least 20. But she's been struggling to lose like the last 15. And what she wants so desperately is to get out of the overweight range of the BMI because of how many family members have diabetes. And I think in her mind, she's like, if I could just lose this weight, she is an incredibly healthy eater. So if I could just lose this weight, then I will be less at risk for developing diabetes, like my dad and my uncles and everybody. And so she's been so frustrated, and she was crying in one of our sessions because she's like, I'm doing all these things right, and I'm still not dropping the weight. And I was like, you know what? You should do Karen's program. This is before I had done your program. I was like, and you know what? I'll do it with you because I would love to learn from Karen. Let's do it together. So, and then we had a second client sign up as well.
Because you did my buy one, get one free special. And
yes, we did the buy one, get one free. And what was so great was that she learned in your program that her blood glucose is totally stable as well, just like mine, because we eat similarly, right? Because she's gone through my program. But her blood glucose stays really stable. And she's so relieved, at least last I chatted with her, because she's like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like she was afraid that she was having all of, she can't lose the weight, she's going to be pre-diabetic. And it was like, oh, I'm actually okay. So even though I might be carrying, according to the BMI, which is totally bogus and irrelevant anyway,
totally bogus.
but at least she can be like, so if I go see my doctor and they tell me I need to lose 10 pounds, so because of the history of diabetes in my family, I can at least be confident that I'm actually not on the path.
It's so interesting that your program, just what you're doing, is actually leading towards a really even blood sugar.
Yes.
Totally. But I actually want to talk about what you're doing and how, like, if people want to work with you, how do they work with you? Do you do one-on-one? Do you do groups?
I do groups. And the reason I do groups is because the community aspect is so, at first it's a little awkward, right? People are like, I don't want to talk about my weight and emotional stuff with other people. But then little by little, people start talking and they're like, oh my God, I experienced that too. Oh, it's so nice to know I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, we're all in this together. And then when we're all in it together, what ends up happening is there's actual research. I know you've read Atomic Habits, I think, by James Clear, right? James Clear talks about how when we are making lifestyle change, because that is what this is, when we are making lifestyle change, we are more likely to sustain those habit changes if we have done them in community. And so the community aspect is actually what I have found will accelerate the process for many, many of my clients. I do have within the group, we do have a third of the time we actually do work privately together. So there is space for private connection with me. But we work in groups. I have a program. It's called 90 Days to Food Freedom. And in those 90 days, I actually teach you the science of weight loss combined with those brain-based solutions. So what I teach in terms of science is totally aligned with what Karen teaches. And I know that because I've taken her program. I'm like, yep, all the same, right? So we are very much aligned in this way. But then from there, what you're getting in those 90 days is then, because here's what happens is we can know, like intellectually, I understand that if I eat chocolate covered peanut butter cups every night, I'm going to crave chocolate covered peanut butter cups every night. I get that. So I'm like, I don't want to do that then. I don't want to set myself up for that. But then what happens when you have a big blowout fight with your husband or your partner and your brain is like, all I want are the chocolate covered peanut butter cups, or you're stressed at work or you have financial stress or you're just tired, you're exhausted, or you're at the party and you want to eat all the things. Like, what do I do then? And so we can understand it intellectually, but that's why, like, I always say, like, keto and Weight Watchers, they're not there for you in the moment that you actually have an emotional need that you really want to navigate. And so that's where the rest of the program really dives into, not just now I have a customized protocol for myself. I know how to eat that feels good, that tastes good, that I love, but also I know how to manage my life so that I'm no longer kind of feeling like I'm being dragged around by the hair by my emotions.
Right.
And that's the self-sabotage part, right? That's the part where we sabotage ourselves. Self-sabotage is rooted in emotional dysregulation, right? Where we're feeling all dysregulated and then we're like trying to solve the problem. And what my clients do is we try to solve it with food and alcohol.
Right. Right. So they do this group, this 90 Days to Food Freedom.
Yeah.
And then you have a VIP group too, don't you? I always find myself going, why? I want to be in the Leah's VIP group.
Well, Karen, you can be in there anytime. My VIP group is basically the group that follows the 90-day program. And it's for women who really, in those 90 days, I give you all the tools. I don't hold back. I'm not like, oh, well, in order to get the second piece, you have to join. No way. I give you all the tools in those 90 days. But the second group is called Committed. And that's my VIP group. And that's the group for women who are like, I am committed to integrating these tools into my life so that I don't have to think about it. So I can become someone who, and this is what I have found so much in my work is I became someone who lost 30 pounds. I became someone who was, according to that stupid BMI, I am in the normal range of the BMI for the first time in my entire life, which for my height is 150 pounds, right? I weigh 150 pounds with minimal effort. But what I found was that in order to do that, I had to actually assume the identity of someone who no longer struggles with weight. And I was someone who struggled with weight my entire life. So I didn't know how to be somebody who didn't struggle with weight. I didn't know how to be somebody who was slim. I didn't know how to be someone who didn't struggle with food. And so that's often why we gain our weight back after we've lost it, is because our identity is still that of the fat girl.
Right.
Right.
Right. And you're working a lot with that identity. I hear that is such a, it's essential, isn't it?
It's huge. And it's about alignment, right? It's about what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And so in that VIP group, it's women who are really committed to the lifestyle shift of integrating it into their lives. Because here's what happens is when you stop buffering with food. So when I was like, oh, I get it. I'm exhausted after work and I come home and I just eat. Well, if I stop myself from eating because I'm like, oh, this is emotional eating and I'm not somebody who does that anymore. You know what happens? I'm still exhausted. I'm still stressed. I'm still disappointed. I'm still tired. I'm still frustrated. So then what happens is we have to do something with that emotion. And so we have to learn. And what ended up happening for me was I was like, I hate my job. I had no idea. I hate my job. And so then I'm like, I want to start a new career. And then I needed coaching to get me through those humps, right? Because I'm like, how do I start a new career and really evolve into becoming someone totally new? And to me, I am unrecognizable now. My life is unrecognizable now compared to what it was 5 years ago when I was still struggling with food and weight. Because my career is different. My time and attention with my family is totally different. I mean, so much is different in my world. My day-to-day is totally different. Oh, and by the way, my body's different, like 30 pounds later, and I prioritize exercise now in a different way than I ever did before. I'm stronger than I've ever been before, but that all was part of the lifestyle implementation. And that's what my VIP group is all about. We work with these 9 different areas of your life to really make sure that they are all integrated and aligned so that you can live the rest of your life as the woman that you most want to be.
That is, so I just put in the links in the comments to, I put a link to Leah's podcast because I feel like everybody listening should just have just get her voice rattling around in your head.
So sweet. Because
sometimes, the way we talk to ourselves, either it's internalized things that other people have said to us or whatever we've done. Sometimes in order to change that, you need to replace it. And I love getting Leah's words in my head. It changes. It really makes a difference. And so I encourage you to just start popping her podcast in when you're on a walk, when you're I love the word, when you're buffering, get some of those words in. And I also put a link to the site where you can learn about her 90-day program, 90 Days to Food Freedom. I love having you as a partner in healthcare and supporting people. I love being able to introduce people to you. I love the work that you do. It feels so supportive.
Oh, thank you, Karen. That's so nice to hear. And right back at you, because I'm constantly talking about your program and referring people over. And actually, I didn't even say this. Huge. I mentioned this to you, but because of your program, my husband has lost 20 pounds. Now, my husband didn't do Karen's program, but when I was doing Karen's program, because he wouldn't listen to me, right? Like you want your partner to tell you. My husband was very overweight, and he is about to have surgery for a hernia. And he would not listen to me, right? Like he works in the beer industry. He drinks tons of beer. It's like all, and so I was watching Karen's class. What was the class called within the program? The one about where you teach about blood sugar, I think it is. It was the bonus class. It was like an hour long. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I put in for my metabolic health course. I just take that and you learn everything about blood sugar and insulin.
Yeah. And so I paused it. It was like right before you just posted this too. It's the graphic that really shows like the symptoms of
metabolic syndrome.
And I was like, oh my God, that is my husband. Oh my God, that is so much of it. Right. And I was like, honey, you have to come in here. And I was like, and I rewinded just a little bit so that he could hear your voice, Karen. Like, and I was like, look, like Karen's an expert, and like, just listen to this one part. And I'll never forget, he sat in my, there it is. He sat in my office, he watched it, and it was just like jaw dropped. And then he saw himself, the way that you presented it about the metabolic dysfunction, he was like, or metabolic syndrome, he was like, oh my God. And he just said to me, he's like, do you think I already have diabetes? And diabetes runs in his family. And I was like, I don't know. And then I was, but then immediately from that moment, Karen, he started listening to me. He's changed how he's eating. He has reduced his beer drinking. He has not stopped. That's fine. But he was like, this isn't even that hard. He feels.
But he didn't have to stop. He just had to
reduce, right? Because he's 6'7" and like 300 pounds. So he could drink 5 beers in a night and not really have it be a thing. But now he's drinking 2. And not only that, but we went out for we went out to celebrate something. And we went to this pizza restaurant and we had pizza and we had all the things. And the next day he was like, I don't really feel that good. And he was like, I can't wait to go back to eating the way that I was eating before because that didn't really feel good. And I was like, oh my gosh. So thanks to you, my husband has also dropped 20 pounds and feels amazing, looks amazing. I mean, not that he looked bad before, but he's not so red and puffy. He's not sweating so much. I mean, all of it. And so I think honestly, you probably saved him from prediabetes. If I truly think that is true. So
that's great.
Huge.
Yeah. And like he's not the first or the second spouse to be lurking in the background.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I always offer the buy one, get one, some kind of buy one, get one offer, because usually someone's coming, but the person who really needs the class is back there, not signing up for the class.
Yes. Well, and like he, with me, I think he just was thinking about weight loss and he didn't really want to do it the way that I was teaching. But then it was you. And I'm like, we're talking diabetes. This is different than weight loss. I mean, they may or may not be related, but this is different. And he was willing to listen to that because that was scary. And I'm not
his wife.
I do not his wife.
How that goes.
That's right. That's right. So huge thank you for that.
Great. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we could
go on
do this.
I know.
And so we will. So I'm going to come on yours.
You are going to come on my podcast. So everybody
we'll have more conversation.
It's going to be so fun. So fun.
Podcast roulette. Oh, Leah Pinelli, awesome, badass weight loss and lifestyle coach, 90 Days to Food Freedom. Please check her stuff out. Get her in your ear. Binge on her podcast. All right. It is a lovely day here. Let's get on with our days.
Do it.
And you guys, thanks for listening and tuning in. We'll check the comments. So if you have any other questions, let me know and I can direct you to Leah if you just need more Leah in your life.
Yes.
All right. All right.
Ciao.
Bye.